Yo, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the Yellow Card TCG channel. It is me, Toku, here to bring you the recap of the premium side of things that we just had over in Toronto Springfest for 2023. I played OTT, and the deck is called Oracle JANK Tank. And to kind of explain why we call it Oracle JANK Tank, we're kind of mishmashing all of the good stuff about OTT into this one nice package for a deck that looks to have multiple methods of winning. Chat, sound off, say hello to YouTube because this is going on to YouTube. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and I'll start off with the grade 3s first. So we have the main finisher of the deck, and that is Popo. So Popo, when it attacks, if your deck has 10 or less cards, until end of battle gains 10k, your opponent can only call grade 0s. So clearly, the idea is that you combo this with Ichishima. Your opponent cannot call grade 0s. Your opponent can only call grade 0s. Cannot G-Guard, can only call grade 0s, but cannot call the grade 0s. Take a damage. That's basically the idea of one of the top ends of the deck. And we have 4 copies of Battle System for Maj. So the reason why I chose for Maj over Mo's version, which runs Susano, is because I liked Fromage as a rear guard. The fact that I could slam Fromage down as a rear guard and still draw 2, ride Fromage, draw 2, call Fromage, draw 2, use up all my counterblast. Sure, but I draw 6, I go through 6 cards in deck, and I find pieces that I need. Sure, I don't get the Susano like drive checks, but I'm able to get drive checks other ways. But this is like my main Vanguard of the deck. Being on a Battle Sister name is relevant for the 2 Battle Sister crits that I do run, which does give me a source of counter charge, but also keeps the deck filled. There are actually some times where you will deck out, so having those Battle Sister crits go back to deck, but also just keeping your crit ratio in deck high is important. Then finally, everybody's loved but hated card, Goddess of the Sun, Amaterasu. First effect, when revealed from your deck, bind the top card of your deck. One of your Vanguards gets 10k and a crit until end of turn. So everybody knows the combo. You go Calico, show 3 Amaterasus, boom, your Vanguard has 30k and 3 crit. But what I like about Amaterasu as well is that when a lot of the times you will go first, you write the Fromage. If you draw into an Amaterasu, she's a brick. She is 4 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious. But it's a Malicious that you can draw and call. Then when you swing with it, you can cycle out the worst card in your hand to top check 3 and stack defensives. So you'll actually go Vanguard first, and then Amaterasu to stack defensives, or basically know the top 2 cards of your deck, so you know in which order you want to G-Guard in. Maybe you see a really nice card on top that you want to draw, so you stack it on top in Octagon Omegas. Or maybe you have a dummy card and then a defensive trigger, in which case you can soul charge a dummy card, get yourself 1 card deeper to 10, and then take the defensive, which then makes every card in your hand more valuable, or stronger in a sense. But yeah, that is Amaterasu. Amaterasu is not only just good on the Momo turn, if you slam this on the Ichi turn, because Ichi is the easiest one to guard, unironically. The Aquaforce player unironically went entire hand to the pass. So if you are able to do this on an Ichi turn as well, it then forces more cards out of their hand, or forces them to no guard the Ichi, which you know has crits on it. Going into the grade 2 lineup, we have 3 Kuroi Kazuchi. Would I want 4? Yes, but space in this deck is already tight. The reason why I'm only running 3 Kuroi rather than 4 is because Kuroi is not on place. You can just sit him in the back and keep doing his skill. So not having to replace him means running 3 is fine in my opinion. But the idea is Kuroi is your fake drive checks to try and pop crits onto the Popo. There's a lot more interesting things you can do with Kuroi. Like I said, you can do Fuyo, stack the Amaterasu, add the Amaterasu with the Kuroi, which then procs Amaterasu to give crit to Van. A lot of times though, that's all Kuroi really is. Even if it gains the 6k power, I don't really care about that too much. For me, it's the fact that I can pop crits onto the Popo going into attack step. Then we run 4 Goddess of Running Water Ichishima. Similar effect to the Amaterasu. When revealed by a card effect, bind the top card, Vanguard gets 10k. Does not get the crit, however, Sag. But 10k is still pretty big, considering how weak the early game for this deck is. It also becomes a 90k attacker if you find a normal unit on top. So, but mostly I use it for the scry. Just being able to scry and like in the late game confirm, oh, am I finding my crit triggers? So between this, and between Sae, you have a good way of like confirming the last 10 cards in your deck and potentially even stacking it if you open all 3 of your extra Saes, because you do want to ride Sae to get the brick out of the deck. But that is Ichishima, and then the last grade 2 we run is Miko of the Round Moon Fuyo. When placed on Vanguard or Rearguard, draw a card, stack a normal unit on top of the deck. If your opponent's Vanguard is greater or greater, put it into Soul. Most of the times you are going to be stacking on top of your deck, because basically this lets you selectively salvage in a sense. Counterblast 1, draw, stack from the top deck, and then you use any one of your draw engines, like your Kurois to draw, your Ichi Stride to draw. And that lets you draw that piece that was in the drop zone back into your hand. Alternatively, I think there was one turn where I had to pop it into Soul so that I had a Soul to pop for Kurai Kazuchi. Either that or with an extra Soul for an Ichi draw 2. And then we're going to go into our grade 1 lineup. The grade 1 lineup is very thin. 3 Ame no Murakumo finds a grade 3. We want to ride the Fromage, so having grade 3 searches is really good. I was originally on a full 4 playset of Tsukuyomi because I wanted to kind of do hard damage denial and then use the Tsukuyomi engine as like the +1, the grade 1 into the grade 2. But the problem was the grade 2 did nothing outside of that turn after you cheat rode in onto it. So I went for more utility plays with the Fuyo. Also 13k booster, which is big. It helped in the early game where you're trying to like push for numbers. So one of the things I did was off of the Tsukuyomi, I found an Amaterasu. The Amaterasu, I milled out, and then I rode into Fuyo to draw and stack the Amaterasu back. Then I slammed Murakumo and revealed the Amaterasu, which then gave the Vanguard 10k in crit. This became 32k to their Vanguard with the crit. So this was like heal Guardian or take it, and hopefully I pop pieces. This is the play that I did against Steven, trying to basically hit one of the Pearl Sisters into the damage zone. And just having the 13k behind the Vanguard makes for better numbers in the late game. But what I didn't like about Murakumo is that it is mandatory to have the on-place effect to shuffle. So while I'm like trying to set up my stack, but I also want to make better numbers, I have to give something up. I need to either choose to RNG the stack and call the Murakumo down for a better booster, or keep the Murakumo in hand because I don't want to shuffle my deck because I know that I have crit on top, right? It'd be nice to have a similar method of a grade 3 searcher, and I know that the 6k one exists, but it's only 6k. I'm good. And here we have my favorite part of the deck. Alistar the Invoker, Invocation. Alternatively, Elemental Hero Stratos, Destiny Hero Malicious. You ride Sae, you put Tsukuyomi on top of it from the deck, and you have your brick out of the deck. You get an extra piece of soul. Because the deck wants to run Sae anyways, because it has a really good utility effect to stack your deck, I figured the one of Tsukuyomi is good. It lets you swap the worst card in your hand for the best card from the top 5 on the next turn after. I was surprised to see how many times that I was just like, I was bricked, and then I found my grade 3 for like the grade 3 write-up. Like just having this piece to like basically turn the worst card in your hand into the best card from the top 5 is why I think it's valid to run the 4 Sae, 1 Tsukuyomi in the OTT grade 1 lineup right now. But yeah, the grade 1 lineup for OTT, incredibly thin. 3 Murakumos, 4 Sae, 1 Destiny Hero Malicious. And the reason why we cut into a grade 1 lineup is because we run the 1 of Sanctitude. This can find you your Sanctitude early. You have a lot of raw draw as well, then you can find your Sanctitudes. The only thing that Sanctitude bricks on, and it happens a bit too often for my liking, is that when you flip Dragon King and you find the Sanctitude off of it, you actually don't get it to hand. You don't get it onto the board because it can't exist, and it just goes back to your deck. Sag. But apart from that, almost everything else is life for Dragon King. It's worth the risk, especially with how strong Sanctitude is. Everybody's striding. Having a PG in a non-trigger lineup gives us more crits to play with because we need a lot of crits to be able to distribute to the Pobos when we're going for that line of play. Then our zeros. Calico, 2 of them. One of them is fine, I think. You could move one of these into an Murakumo, but I like 2 just because I want to always have the option of having this in hand, double the chance of drawing it, have more options to just mill 3 from the deck. Like I said, it doesn't really matter what you're picking up of this. The fact is that you're losing 3 cards in deck, which then makes it faster Popo. If you have 2 of this and you have like 16 cards in deck, this is minus 6 cards from deck, Popo's live again. The original draft of this list was actually running like the 1 Tsukuyomi and 4 of the grade 2 Tsukuyomi. That way I have grade 1 Tsukuyomi as a chance to find Calico and grade 2 Tsukuyomi as a chance to find Calico. I might want to try going back to that, but at the moment, I think having the Murakumo and the Fuyo has done more in the tournament than having the 12k vanilla beat stick would. Then, triggers. Obviously, we have the 4 Heal Guardians, 4 of the Strike crits, 2 of the Soul crits, 2 of the Battle Sister crits, 3 crit Sentinels, and a Martinoa. So, a Martinoa, it may be the most sus part about this deck. Perhaps the Crate trigger would be better, since mostly you're only hoping for defensive, and I did lose a game because I drove checked this, but I also win games because I drive checked this, and just having extra drive checks on my Amaterasus where they can choose their triggers, that's really strong, I think. The chances of like you losing to yourself on this is really low, and like I said, there's ways to play around it. I could have Calicoed and popped it out of my deck to make sure I didn't drive check it. Definitely should have done that. But I think a Martinoa has more liveliness outside of just being that defensive in this deck. Now, obviously, if this was banned, I'd be much happier because then I could make this my 3rd Muffin. Then I would have 3 Muffins, and if I could go back to 1 card in deck and I draw all my Muffins, I just throw them back in the deck. I'm like, I have triple trigger. Throw them all back into the deck, use a Sae from the top 2 cards of my deck. If I see 2 triggers, I leave it there, and I'm guaranteed at least 2 triggers. If I don't, if I see the normal unit, put the normal unit on bottom, and I know I have triple trigger on top. So, unironically, I would love for the OT to get banned so I can turn into a 3rd Muffin. Crit Sentinels, because it's a shiny yellow card. Crit, because it's a shiny yellow card and it has 15k shield. And Strike crit so we can stride. And I guess the good thing to note about Muffin is that because we have a Battle Sister Vanguard, we actually get the counter charge on this deck. So I actually had lines of plays where I would ride the Fromage, ride the Momo, call more stuff, do more counterblast stuff, draw two with like double Fromage, send the Muffin back, countercharge 4 when the Momo swings twice. So it's just a little bit of a bonus of being on the Battle Sister grade 3 that I am able to get the full effect of the Muffin crit. But you don't have to be on Battle Sister to be able to send it back to deck, so you are still able to do it in the Susano version. But last card, Ichibi Yoshi starter. Let's go ahead and go into the G zone now. Ichi. So any chance that you have to stride into Ichi, you should. And the reason for that is even if you don't do the draw 2 skill, you're forcing your opponent to guard with pieces. Because they can't guard with zeros, they can't G guard, all their triggers are dead in hand. And the longer that their triggers rot in hand, the more that they're forced to commit pieces to guard this attack and other attacks as well. Yes, Sanctitude exists, but that's a one of. Yes, Protect Markers exists, but Protect X, Omega lol, well, unless you're GI. That's why we have Popo. The longer that you're able to keep them under a grade 0 G-Guard lock, the worse their hand becomes over time, if that makes sense. They have all these triggers in hand that are effectively bricks because they can't guard with them. Sometimes you can even stride the Ichi on GB3. Don't use the draw 2 and just flip up to get the GB lock. Then get your draw engine off of somewhere else. And then next turn, you'll have another Ichi, then another Ichi, and then if you need the Oracle, then you can flip another Ichi. So you can keep them under the lock as long as possible. Then we have Momo. Momo is here for the matchup where it's going faster than expected. That makes sense? Or you need to go faster than expected. So, like I said, in Kagero and in Mega Colony, which are more control-based decks, this is the stride I went into over Ichi. Reason being is that I needed to win before they grinded me out of resources. So I said, throw it. I'm throwing the entire kitchen sink at the wall. Do you have 2 PGs? That was the question I asked them. Do you have 2 PGs? And luckily for me, they only had 1 in hand. Other 2 strides, Wakahirume. Never comes up. Why do I have this card in here? It's funny if it does. Yeah, you can stack the OT. And then you can have like Amaterasu on the side and go like, haha, Amaterasu with OT, stacking for crits. Amaterasu on the side, stacking for crits. But realistically, it doesn't come up. It's only there because, honestly, flip fodder. What else could I run in this slot? More G guards. To be honest, the only strides that we run are these strides. So we've also got the pair of Dragon King. That's first stride. Decent second stride, but it's really only a first stride if you get first stride. Every other time, you're trying to G-guard into Ichi. Or soak damage and one-shot with Momo. But in the games where you do get first stride, Dragon King is a good thing to have there because it is basically a +3. We'll take a +3 when we can. Good stride. Flip fodder, and then our G-guards. 3 Amaterasu. Soul charges and gives us information. And then 2 Octagonal Magus. So Octagonal Magus, it's really strong if you're a sack or if you're able to have pieces to confirm knowledge. So if I have 2 G guards, I can Amaterasu and then know the top card of my deck. Or I could, like I said, end turn with an Amaterasu attack, know the top card of my deck, draw it. What's strong about Octagonal Magus? It's a 30k G guard that replaces itself. Now, if you do have to call it blind, the majority of the deck is 0 and the majority of the deck is grade 3. So if you call 0 and 3, you're usually safe on that. But when you miss, it feels really bad because you become literally less than vanilla. You counterblasted 1 for 0 shield. And then I ran 1 Colburn. Reason I ran 1 Colburn is because Highlander hands get really fucking huge. So I'm able to use the Highlander hand as part of my shield. Can I get a stick bug in chat? My opponent's hand is big, so is my guard. Maybe this could have been a Dismal. Maybe this could have been a 3rd Octagonal Magus, or maybe even like Bavarois, because that's also counterblast on refund itself. But that's basically the idea in the G-Guard lineup. This one helps Fuel Soul, because this is technically a -1 from deck if you are able to do it. Guaranteed. Also, check the top card of the deck. Know if you have a defensive coming up. Helps in planning that. Then this is the refund. Also a -1 from deck if you hit it. But you're not always guaranteed to hit it unless you have ways of setting it up. Now for some lines. So, I think everybody knows the obvious line. And the obvious line in this deck, or one of the ways of winning with this deck, is Popoichi. So, you get your deck to a thin amount of cards. Let's go ahead and throw those back there. You stride Ichi, you have the GB live, so your opponent cannot G guard. So, because your opponent cannot G guard, your opponent cannot call grade 0s, but Popo says they can only call grade 0s, they cannot protect marker these. So these are generally gonna be doing 2 damage on the board here. Now the problem is 2 damage is not 6 damage. How do I get this to 6 damage? Well, we have our stackers, we have deck thinners, we have force triggers. So something that I might do even is like, oh, I'll go Calico, and then maybe I'll show like, oh, okay, I'll show my 3 Amaterasus, I'll get one of them, find the top 2 cards in my deck, yada yada yada, or it's supposed to be 3. And then after this, I'll go, okay, Kuroi, Soul Blast, rip a trigger. Okay, ignore that, pretend that's a crit. But then I'm gonna go crit. And then I can Sae. This Kuroi has done its job. Into the soul it goes. Stack the top 2 cards of my deck. If I see a crit, cool. Then I can do another Kuroi. Activate the crit. Onto the Momo, onto the Popo. Another Sae. Let's go ahead and picking up my deck again. Now this side's done, this side is not done. So we'll pop the Kuroi back into the deck, check the top 2 cards of my deck. Maybe one's a normal unit, right? Okay, go to the bottom. I don't need you here. And then we can stack the top deck even more. And if you wanted, one more Kuroi. Oh, cool. Everything there. So between the size between the Kurois and like maybe like all my Kurois are expended, I can then go, all right, Ichi, check top. It's a crit. Cool. Leave it on top. Now I know that the top is a crit. So if I know top is a crit, sometimes I'll even go van to rear to like completely deny them of like defensives, right? Or if I read, if I've been tracking their hand and I know they have Elementaria Sanctitude in hand, this goes Vanguard to like pull it out. But you swing, you find your crits. And because you're thinning your deck so much, like you can at least expect to get at least like 2 crits from all the testing. That's normally the amount of crits I find. And then you just swing with Popo for game. This is like the most obvious line with the deck. You thin your deck down, then you Ichi Popo them, and hopefully swing in for game. So depending on certain matchups, you need to play it a bit differently. Some matchups you have to like hit them early, so that way both Popo lines are lethal. Otherwise, they'll just Sanctitude one and then take the other, and then they kill you on the next turn, or you just lose the deck out. The other obvious line that we all know and love, we got our draw 2, but oh well, we've taken some damage. We taken 5 damage. Let's say that we rolled up, we took our draw 2, maybe we healed out, and then we just took another 5 clean damage from our opponent. So us being at 5 means there's less for our opponent to have heal triggers on. But thank God that Momo is not GB restricted and we can first stride her. Otherwise, this deck would really have issues in these kind of situations. But yeah, we can stride into Momo. And then on this point, we do everybody's favorite. Wow, Calico. Then off of Calico, we find our 3 Amaterasus. Then our 3 Amaterasus go off. And our Vanguard gets 30k, 3 crit. So now Momo is sitting at a nice and pretty 57k, 3 crit. And off of her own effect, she'll become 87k, 3 crit. That's I'm not happy with that. That's not big enough. Let's try and go further beyond. Let's go for another Calico. And this time, we'll pop out the Ichis. And then the 3 Ichis will go off, binding 3 from the top. We'll get one of them. And our Vanguard gets another 30k now. So between the 2 Calicos, you can pump your Vanguard 60k before it even triggers. So we're at 87. So if we swang with the skill, 117k to the Vanguard with base 4 crit at the moment. But I'm not happy with that yet either. I'm gonna call Fuyo. Counterblast 1. Draw a card. I'm gonna sack an Amaterasu. Now I'm gonna call Kuroi. Soul Blast. Discard a card. I'm gonna drive check. Oh! Amaterasu was revealed from deck. Effect. 10k crit to Van. But I'm not happy with that either. Fuyo. Draw. Stack. Kuroi. Oh, cool. Bind top. 10k crit to Van. So, on this line of play, the more Fuyos and the more Kurois you have are like ways of like revealing from top deck. Maybe like if you have Murakumos, if you have Ichi that you could just like check top reveal and Amaterasu on top as well to have it self-bind. Good way to actually get numbers in. But you know what? Because it's funny, I'll even call the Amaterasu up front. And then you swing, you ask them, do they have a PG? They don't have a PG? Cool. They die. And if they don't, they die again. Oh, cool. Heal trigger. But then, if they do somehow live, hopefully, like, you've, like, terrorized their entire hand, but who knows what happens in a game of Vanguard, right? You're going to attack with the Amaterasu. Discard. Check top 3. I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. So I even managed to draw a heal trigger, so what I'm looking at here is what I can do is I can stack it. I can stack it like this. So the plan here is I'm going to double defensive with those 3 cards. So on their first attack, I'm going to G-Guard. And I'm going to declare grade 3 with this G-Guard. And so the top card of my deck is indeed a grade 3. Add to hand, gains 15k shield. Then because Amaterasu was revealed but from the deck by effect, I bind the top card of my deck and my Vanguard gets 10k and a crit for the turn. So I'm now 22k base defensive. I now know the next card of my deck. Crit. I'm now 32k base defensive. So that's how you can use Amaterasu defensively. Alright everybody, that's going to be it for the Oracle JANK Tank deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you liked the lines and the tournament recap. Proud of myself and proud of the boys on the Duma Dynasty to be able to bring some Hell Guai home. In any case, this has been Token from Yellow Card TCG. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, as we will have more content like this upcoming for you. We'll see you next time.